Chief Conscious? So we're at 4, but I'm gonna give Michael a few more minutes. I know Natalie's gonna be late, so. Michael, how you doing, sir?
I'm all right. Yourself?
Good, good. Madam Clerk, are you ready to get started? Sam, you ready, sir?
Remy, are we ready?
Thank you, everyone. I call the Charlottesville City Council October 21st, 2024 meeting to order. Ms. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Councilor Ostrom notified us that she'll be a little late today. Councilor Payne,
Here.
Vice Mayor Pinkston,
Here.
Councilor Snook,
Here.
Mayor Wade.
Here. Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
I move for approval of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, second, can you please cast your vote? All right. The meeting will be divided into 3 sections. The first will be a work session to hear and discuss presentations that do not require a council vote, followed by a closed session. Then City Council will have a regular business meeting at 6:30. We're now going to have a discussion on community interventions. City Manager Sanders?
So, good afternoon, councilors and members of the public. This work session would have normally on the schedule been my work plan update. This would have been the first quarter update as to what's been accomplished in the past 90 days. I decided to flip that a little bit and mess with you all and what you might expect, and instead use this time to bring some attention to a series of community matters that have come up on a quite regular perspective as it relates to comments and conversations that I've been a part of, as well as I know that you all have been a part of. So I framed it as community interventions. A lot of people may be assuming that I'm simply going to talk about homelessness because they think there is one answer and one solution, and I'm here to dispel that myth. That is not true. But instead, what we're going to talk about is what I have categorized in the 3 areas of community safety, homeless intervention, and quality of life. And it is to talk about things that fall into each of those categories. In some instances, they overlap. But ideally, the goal is for us to begin to decide what bold action are we willing to take, are we ready to take, and I've tried to outline as much as we've been talking about, and to prepare for you the ability for us to move if you are so inclined, as of course, everything that is on the list comes at a huge cost. Huge in that simply it means that you have to make this decision over another decision, and I know that we have a lot that we're talking about. So I'm going to go through what is a litany of things in those 3 different categories, but I'm standing in front of you today saying to you that we can do all the things that are on this list if you are so inclined, but again, reminding you that that means other things won't necessarily be able to get done or become a little more challenging for us to try to do, and we'll have to be creative and or wait on some other things. So I wanted to acknowledge that this is about the request for action that we've gotten from so many different members of our community, respond to specific calls. Individuals have shared what they think the answer is, what they believe with the context that they have the answer should be, without the full context, of course, that we have at times of why certain things won't work. This conversation is also meant to formalize the allocation of the remaining, to frame up the allocation of the remaining ARP balance. That'll come as a formal action that I will bring to you in the next between the 2 meetings in November, ideally meant to expend those funds because we are near the deadline, end of year being the deadline for having to encumber all the funds that we have and then we still have until December of '26 to spend those funds. But decisions have to be made by December 31st on what the remaining balance that we have can be used for. I'm also going to highlight additional funding needs because, of course, everything is not set in stone as to how much it's going to cost. It all depends on the scope and how long we're going to do the various things that we're talking about. It'll highlight issues and conflicts, look to address some of the longstanding issues, improve outcomes, which is really what I'm all about, and ultimately this is about defining and taking some bold action. But I also want to point out that this is really about setting new standards and managing expectations. We can't do everything. You've all heard me say that on a regular basis. But ideally what this is meant to do is to help us determine what are some things that we can do. And as it relates to those three topics, community safety, homeless interventions, and quality of life, in setting a standard, we're making some decisions about what we will accept, what we won't accept, and what it is that we're willing to mitigate in between those two decisions. So everything that I do, as I told you, is that I'm going to constantly remind you of City Council's vision, which you said it is to be a place where everyone thrives, and I see that as my marching orders. That is what I'm here to do everything I can to implement that vision. So this work is all in that vein. So when we talk about community safety, we're going to start with violence prevention and interruption. The city has been involved with the county and the university for quite some time. A variety of individuals in the community have participated in what's been labeled the Community Safety Working Group. That group has been still working, meeting. They came up with a 21-odd page list of recommendations, and then we turned it into a smaller group of 2 individuals per jurisdiction. Chief Kachis and Misty Graves represents the city, and they're continuing to work. And I've always been operating under the mindset that they will evolve into a task force on violence, to continue to prioritize what is the work that we can do, what are the various issues that keep coming up, what are initiatives that we can take on. And ideally, that's what I'm hoping that we can continue to prioritize as we figure out what are some things that we can do to mitigate the issues that we see. Youth Lead is the pre-arrest diversion program that we talked to you all about. I think it was in the summer. We talked about that being a priority that has been initiated.
The pre-arrest diversion?
Yes.
We're in the process of training.
So in the process of training individuals who are going to help us with that, and the goal would be to intervene in moments to keep an individual who find themselves in an arrest situation not wrecking their lives forever. The goal would be to intervene, try to do what we can as an interdiction, and then maybe change the course of their lives before they become someone who finds themselves locked up for a long time. There's some considerations that me and the chief are going to continue to talk about. I attended a ComStat meeting last week, and the chief can tell you I was very frustrated, so I'm going to make this statement to the public at large. Please lock your doors to your cars and your homes. It is not a sign that this is not a safe place. It's just common sense. We need to lock our doors. A number of the situations that have arisen in the past months have all been simply related to the idea that we got out of a car and we walked away from it. And we didn't use the lock that it was made to have. All we had to do was lock the door, and it could have made a difference. We have found guns in cars that have been stolen because somebody left the car door unlocked, and then the gun is used in the commission of a crime. We have to intervene with our common sense interruptions as well. So I told him I was going to say that. I told the team I was going to say that. So
Yeah.
he said, should I say that? And I was like, I'll say it for you. But ideally, we've got to make sure that we just remind people that it's not a sign that this isn't a safe place. It's opportunity. We should just block that opportunity, and we really should think about where we put our guns. So some of the ongoing considerations and the things that I want to talk to the chief about is, what about dispersing gun locks? It says bun buyback instead of gun buyback, so I don't know, that was me moving too fast. And just really thinking about this community safety campaigns that could be put out there, just to kind of remind our public that there are things that we should all do to keep our community safe. Mental health supports. We told you all about Anchor, the co-responder model that we launched in July. I'll say gangbusters is the word. It's going well. It's going great so far. And we're already talking about the need for possibly expanding. We knew that that was going to happen, but we're really in a place that we're thinking about there are additional things that need to be done. I heard also from our police department that we're setting up a special code overnight so that we can code situations that happen overnight when the Anchor team is not available, so that the next morning they can engage. that's a sign that we need people overnight. So therefore, it's clear to us that expansion is a priority that we should be thinking about. So I'm looking at figuring out ways to fit that into our budget because that's going to be an ongoing thing. So I'm not suggesting we spend anything on it yet. It's just to point out that these are the things that we're talking about internally that we have to keep thinking about. Some health interventions. Deputy Marshall is managing our opioid abatement funds that are coming in. She has been waiting for me to tell her that it is okay to use some of that money on two key things, Narcan distribution and sharps containers, and I told her today you can do that. And the goal is that we can offer direct interventions on the outcomes that we see interacting with people in our community. So we're going to move forward on formalizing that and really taking the right steps to setting this up. And all of this is in the vein of just helping people who are struggling with various issues so that we can then connect them to services and hopefully break some of those chains. And then Marcus Alert is continuing to seek interim steps. That's our mandate. We have to meet by 2028. We still don't have new information to tell us what it is that we're supposed to be doing. And I made the decision that we weren't going to wait. So we're going to keep doing. Anchor is an example of a part of that. And the goal is for us to continue to figure out what else can we do. What I would rather us do is edit what we already have deployed over time that has been working for us to meet the mandate versus waiting for the mandate to come with details because they're going to come and then we're going to be trying to figure out what are they talking about. I had to watch what I said right there. I almost said a bad word. Bike ped safety. You all know we've been hearing a lot and we've had some various situations over time as I've talked to you about building a sidewalk priority list, one that is an active list that helps us really frame the work that we're doing. We've done good planning work here. I've said that to you all repeatedly. We have the Streets at Work plan. We have the Bike Ped Master Plan. We have done a lot of analyzing all the things that need to be done. But never could I ever find anyone who could tell me this is the list that we're working on right now. And that I saw as a problem, and we've been working to address that. And Ben Chambers, who you've been able to hear from, has brought forward 3 tiers of projects over a 5-year outline. And the goal right now is for us to figure out how do we fund that. So that is part of the budget conversation that we're in right now for FY26. And then we look at that as being one of those things that will have to be identified in the CIP over the next 5 years because we want to make progress. We want to move forward every single year. I've added a category called urgent infrastructure, and it doesn't mean that anything else is not important, but this urgent infrastructure are just the things that we know we can do right now. Let's just get it done. We actually were able to go out on Elliott Street at South First Street and install additional measures to make it a part of a better safety situation. Yes, we did that after we had a loss of life, and we should not ever wait for that. But in that moment, we were able to figure out what we could do, and we got out there and did it. That says to me, I have a team that can do the work. It's us just being able to figure out how to prioritize that work and get it done. So right now, the question that I've posed to Mr. Freeze is, and where can we go next? What's new? What are we going to be able to do after this? And then he has reminded me that we're working on traffic study and traffic calming, a speed study and traffic calming initiatives as well, because we were looking for what are the alternatives. And I posed to him and others that what if the city was 25 miles an hour everywhere except on the bypass? What would that be like? What would that feel like? I don't know that anybody's ever asked that question before, but I'm not afraid to ask the questions. So now I'm going to push them to tell me why we shouldn't do that. What are the drawbacks to doing that? Because if we could get to that, we might actually see that it would be a better situation all around because we are a very dense area and we're talking about making it even more dense. So that's something for us to give some thought to. And then we'll bring to you the update on our VDOT portfolio at the next meeting in November.
And the traffic calming might involve speed humps, perhaps?
Yes,
That's one of the-
speed humps, bumps, tables, all those words that you've heard. I posed the question, and I've said to James, he can nod affirmative now, that I said to him, can we do any of this stuff? Because I know we say we can't do it. But do we know that we can't do it? And why can't we do it? And he is on a mission right now to have conversation with all the parties to find out from them, are there reasons why we can't, why we should not? And does it apply to all of those? Or does it apply to this one in this situation? And I would love for them to bring back to me. We can do a number of things in a number of different ways if you're interested in doing that. And I'm saying to them, I'm interested in hearing that. So I think we're going to try to be a little more creative about what we can do and bring those examples back.
Got it.
Homeless intervention. So when we look at homeless intervention, my friends at the Salvation Army are here because I did tell them I was doing this presentation, and they said, "You want me to come?" And I said, "If you want to, come on." So I've spent a lot of time with Major Mark talking about what the Salvation Army is working on, and I'll say that I've been very pleased with what he has also offered in the way of recommendations of a solution for the types of things that I've been talking about. But I want to focus on the Salvation Army a little bit because I want this to be received with the endorsement that it is meant to come. Salvation Army is working on a new Center of Hope at its current location on Ridge Street, and I am saying to everyone in this community that we should do everything in our power to make that possible and make it so as soon as possible. That facility is going to make a difference, and the things that we see and the experiences that folks are having in our community are directly tied to what is and what is not available in this city. We need more of what the Salvation Army is doing, and that is why I think it is important for us to figure that out. What the Salvation Army has also done and what Major Mark has done is share with me that I appreciate what you're talking about in the low barrier shelter space, and I have an idea, and he brought that idea forward, and that idea has been what I've been focused on ever since. And we've been in conversation with a variety of individuals. And the goal has been to shutter the current Cherry Avenue thrift store and convert it to a low barrier shelter. So that's the official announcement that's what we're thinking about. For anybody who hasn't heard it yet, that's what the thought is that we can move forward with converting that facility into a low barrier shelter. The question is, how much is it going to cost and who's going to run it? And those are the things that we're still working on. But I want to say that that's what we're focused on. And ideally, this gives those who are watching the opportunity to see this is what the new Center of Hope would look like. It's amazing. There's an amazing facility, expanded, more services, more rooms, more opportunities to help people in need. And I think this is something that we all should rally and get behind and make it happen. What I'm pointing out is that we as the city need to make a contribution to such a capital campaign. What I've been able to do at this moment, because the ARC funds that we have right now, we have $3.5 million available. And that $3.5 million is to address a host of things. And I am committing at this moment in the form of a recommendation that $1.5 million of that be given to the Salvation Army as a part of their capital campaign, and that an additional $2.5 million be added to it at the end of this year when we find out what our surplus number is going to be. And that too is an announcement because there will be a surplus. It's going to be a significant surplus, and that is why I know that $2.5 million will be available. So that would be committing $4 million to the Salvation Army Center of Hope. So
Does that include a commitment to the Cherry Avenue project, or is that
Right.
separate?
separate.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not done spending money.
Okay.
Sorry. There's a lot here. But that is what I am offering in the form of a recommendation for what it is that I can see that we can afford to do with resources that we have and we do see that are coming. In addition to that, with the closure of the thrift store, the Salvation Army is taking a financial loss because they're not going to be receiving the operating dividends from that thrift store. So the recommendation there is to add $200,000 a year for the next 5 years to replace those funds. So that's another $1 million to the Salvation Army. Yes, ma'am.
If the Salvation Army is able to reopen a store during those 5 years, would that contribution cease?
I think that is part of what we can discuss. We haven't committed to anything yet, so this is just me. They're hearing this for the first time officially too. I told them that I was going to make announcements, but I wasn't going to tell them exactly what because I wanted to make sure I was ready. But these are tied to the numbers that we have already talked about, the need being. I think that's one of the questions, and the way I would say that we would frame the agreement is that if you were to make the decision to reinstate a store, then we would not need to offset that loss. But I would imagine, based on where we are, and if the major wants to speak, we'll be able to do that at the end as well. But that's going to be a big project. That's going to take some time to do. Now we're adding a low barrier shelter in the middle of all of that. So honestly, it seems like that window is probably a safe window for where we're not going to be thinking about a store.
Yeah,
But that's a good question.
Yeah, just to quickly tag on to that, is that I think there may be some community partners that could assist in
Sure.
finding a location, you know,
If that was
particularly
a-
if it's something that's
Yeah.
temporary, you know, to help fill in that gap. Because I would think that you wouldn't want that facility or that need gone for 5 years. People will find other ways to fill it. So hopefully we can find a place. And I think it may be part of your presentation. If not, if you could, because it really helped me when it was explained to me what is a low-barrier shelter, and you know what would differentiate that from. You know.
All right, let's pause and
Yeah.
let the major speak to that a little bit.
So we currently operate what is considered a high barrier shelter at 207 Ridge Street. And the qualifiers for it being a high barrier shelter is based, one, on the property had children at the 207 Ridge Street because of our transitional housing. So individuals who come in, we do a background check, we do sex registry checks to make sure that legally we can have children and guests on site. The program that is currently established is geared towards helping individuals to end their cycle of homelessness. And so when individuals come in, they come in on a 21-day emergency stay, and they can come in for any reason or cause. But during that 21 days, if they begin to engage with our case management team and begin to set goals, obtaining their state ID, obtaining their birth certificates, if they will start working towards those goals, they obtain another 21 days, and so on. Another 3 sets of goals, another 21 days. We are currently seeing between 8 and 10. This last month, we saw 11 individuals leave our shelter, stabilized out of homelessness, now as productive individuals in our community. So it is a stopgap that we've created to help give an opportunity for individuals to step into productive living in the community. The low barrier shelter is simply a warm, safe environment for individuals to get off the street, have an environment they can sleep in, and we can begin working with them. Some of them may need to go into a rehab program to qualify coming into our program, whatever it might be, but it is a good bridge opportunity for us to bring them into the high barrier shelter environment. And just last thing that I would like to say, Sam mentioned the 50 beds that will be available at Cherry Ave. Post-construction, when we return back to the Ridge Street, that building would be about 95% available to the community, and really there's capacity for upwards of 100 beds at that facility. Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? Anybody?
Thank you.
Okay.
So one thing I want to pick up on in regards to that is, because I wasn't thinking about what could happen after the Salvation Army moved out, because it'll be a co-located situation. But that idea of there will still be capacity at this site when they move means that we won't be finished thinking about what else is possible as a homeless intervention in a few years after we get the Center of Hope on the ground as well. That was powerful for me, because what I know is opening the shelter alone is not going to get everyone off the street. We all know that. But what we will do is we should be able to reduce how many people are out on the street and why are they out there on the street. And then we can start to target specifically what that is. If that means that you need to be in an environment where this is available to you and this is available to you, then maybe we have to build that space out. But we would have the flexibility in a co-location near the Center of Hope, because it's just up the street. It makes a lot of sense that we're actually creating the synergy amongst this building being where it is and having capacity, even after we finish what we've been dreaming of for the past year. So just wanted to point that out to you as well. The low barrier shelter at this time requires about $750,000, I think is the last number I got, for facility improvements. I'm suggesting that we offer a third of that up out of our ARC funds, and the goal would be to hopefully encourage our friends in the community, including the county, to join us in chipping away at making that cost go away. And if we had to come back and revisit that, I think we could look at further conversations there. The other part of the low barrier shelter, because at this present time, there is not an expectation that the Salvation Army will run the low barrier shelter, and I am not identifying any organization, any individual organization, because I have not gotten a commitment from an organization to serve as the operator of the low barrier shelter. But what I am suggesting is that we need to dedicate an annual contribution towards the operations of shelter facility as well, and that is at $500,000 a year. So that would be adding a contractual or agency relationship to sustain low barrier shelter operations, because there's going to be a need for staffing to be able to manage that.
Is that, would
Yes.
that be the entire operating budget for the low barrier shelter, or would that be just what the city would want to contribute?
I doubt that that's enough to cover what it could end up requiring, but at this present time, we have not been able to get enough information to know fully. So at this moment, I'm just offering up what I feel is a comfortable amount for us to be able to consider working in as our space. And then we go beyond that when we get details as to what the needs may be. I will offer that the Salvation Army has indicated that if we would like for them to consider running the shelter, they would consider doing that, running the low barrier shelter. So then it would be quicker and easier for us to get what the cost projections would be. I'm supposed to continue advancing slides. So the goal would be to take what is the thrift store and convert that to a low barrier shelter. I'm also going to now start pointing out other things. Now I'm spending money, Councilor Snook. It's just coming, $1 after the next. Internally, the city needs a better handle on what's happening on the street. We have a number of organizations doing great work. They're all doing work in their lanes, and some of it is not necessarily feeding its way back to us. It's not necessarily feeding its way back to us in the form of reports on grants. It's not necessarily coming in the way of us being able to glean as much as we need from a grant proposal. So I'm suggesting that we need to have some folks out there with no restrictions on how they serve, who they serve, why they serve. They simply are city staff with the goal of finding out, why are you in this situation and what can I do to help you? How did you get here? What has happened to you? All the things that matter in us being able to transition you back to self-sufficiency. And I am proposing that we do that in the way of a street outreach team. So that would be 2 staff members who would have the job of just constantly being out and about and interacting and engaging and finding out information to bring back that can be processed and synthesized by this city government for all that it does and investing in this work in various ways. I'll say, and one last thing, I'll say to you that the goal of this is to better inform some of the work that we're doing.
Just quickly, is this different from the proposal you're talking about that they're doing down in Roanoke for the downtown mall?
Yeah, this is different. That's coming later.
Okay.
It has a price tag on it too.
Okay.
So what I'm suggesting here, because I have, and Deputy Marshall can tell you, I've been reluctant to just create positions for the sake of creating positions and for the city government to take on service delivery. I'm not a fan of the idea of doing too much of that, but I'm willing to go where I feel we need to go, and this in my mind is a gap area that needs some attention. What I'm proposing here is a 2-year grant demonstration. That is for us to hire 2 people for 2 years. They know they're in a grant funded capacity, and the goal is to go find as much information as we possibly can, understand what it is that we can learn from all of this, and help us figure out how to use it. It may turn into a number of things. An example of what it could turn into is communities across the state of Virginia right now are establishing offices of homeless services because they know that they're faced with the issue and it's not going away, and they're building a team inside the government to focus on the issue. This could be the beginning of that for us, but I'm not ready to make that commitment just yet. I want to test the notion, and that's what you'll see that word demonstration a few times, because I'm ready to do forward movement. We just need to do something and see what we can figure out and stop speculating on what can and can't be done. So that is the street outreach effort, and you do see that 4th line up there says deploy the already funded homeless services coordinator. We've had a position that's been vacant intentionally for probably 2 years because we haven't been able to figure out how to do what it is that we're doing, and that's why I'm trying to bring this to an end. I'm going to give this person two staff members to work with, and we're going to have a team that's going to work on interacting with people, and that's the goal.
So for the low barrier shelter, will it have some wraparound services in that building?
That's part of what we have to figure out, and that's what we would be negotiating with partners. That will be the conversation I'm looking for us to be able to have. This person would be in that conversation. Ms. Marshall would be in that conversation. And the goal would be that if we set that up as a place for people to go, there should be something when they get there. It's not just a bed or a meal. There should be more that we should be able to provide there.
Is that 440 for both years or per year?
Yes, that's for
Okay.
2 years.
Thank you.
So the Blue Ridge Area Coalition for the Homeless is our continuum of care. The COC today has a person and a half? Yes, a person and a half, and they're responsible for working in a region, so I don't know why that makes sense to anyone. And they are who is really supposed to be the cornerstone, the centerpiece to bringing all the various parties together. In all the conversations in the 3 years that I've been with the city, there's been a capacity concern. Ashley and I sat down with the director, Shayla Washington, and talked to her about what is it that you've learned since you joined this organization and got in there. And the word capacity, I can't count how many times it came up. There is so much more that needs to be done in that space. There's probably money that we could go after. There are probably opportunities for us to partner with others that we just don't have the bandwidth to be able to take on. We don't necessarily have the ability to engage directly with the partners as much as we need to. So I'm suggesting that this continuum of care, the continuum of care is worthy of being also designated as one of those contractual agencies because their work is never going to end. They are here to work on this issue. We have the display of the issue in a very significant way. And the only way that we're going to make a difference is to put the resources in the place that's going to make a difference to work with the people that we see on the street on a daily basis.
Do you have any specific examples of what some of those administrative functions or interfacing with direct outcomes would mean?
I'm not going to butcher it. Ashley, do you have anything that you would offer in that space? But there's more to figure out exactly.
So in BRAC's updated strategic plan, they themselves identify several administrative functions, everything from helping to support marketing, outreach, and education of the organizations that compose the COC to many others. So this is part of their actual existing strategic plan where they really wanted to expand some of those administrative functions. And I will make sure that I send that to you, council member.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't going to overlap with the jobs that we would be in the grant-funded position?
No, because we're going to be doing street outreach. There may be occasional things that they would do in that space, but the goal for me was to make sure that that organization could focus on working with the partners and doing what needs to be done there, because there's work that needs to be done there too. The next slide here is, this is a pallet shelter. This is a rapid shelter product. It has been making waves across the country. Ashley and I have ventured into 2 of them now at ICMA conferences. And we have found communities across the country that are doing micro communities where they are finding a location and they're adding these units in the form of single and double occupancy spaces. It gives you the ability to be inside versus outside. There are some facilities that have a restroom inside, and then there's separate restroom facilities so that you truly can make the micro community happen. I am suggesting that we acquire 6 of these and figure out how we make our version. It may not necessarily be a micro community. It may end up being individual placements in areas that we can make it work. But again, at this moment, we have these funds available. We can do something that can lead to a demonstration of something that could be built upon, and that is ultimately what I'm recommending here. And us taking a look at how do we bring the resource that people don't have, and that is covered shelter, that we can begin to plop down into places where it makes sense, where they can get the wraparound support that they need, and then we can hopefully lift them out of that individual temporary location into a permanent one.
So each unit is about $100,000?
Yes, that includes the transport setup, but
Right.
it's less expensive to acquire.
Would this require any change in our zoning or building codes or?
That's what James is for. He's going to figure all that out
Yeah.
and make sure that everything works. I've sent him pictures of things that I want to do, and he said we could do it. But I didn't send him this picture.
Okay.
I'm not even looking at him right now because we're going to figure it out. That's why we're demonstrating.
Were you suggesting that the 600,000 come out of the ARP money?
Yes, everything that I'm spending is ARP unless I say surplus or budget, but
Okay.
everything is ARP.
And maybe this is TBD. I guess these are just basically small manufactured homes, which I think we all hope likely already are allowed under the zoning. In addition to that, were you able to tell from the ICMA conference demonstrations for the communities who have done this, are they pairing them with vouchers or just having an extremely low rent level? And is it nonprofits who are doing like property maintenance,
No, these are-
property management, or is it the cities directly?
Yeah. It's all shelter. It is, there, no one is charging rent to live in these. They're meant to be temporary. But there are some places that are doing them in large quantities. The city of Birmingham is putting 100 of these into a couple of different communities and planning to do even more if they have to. But there is management that comes with it in setting up the micro-community, so that's part of, this could end up being a partnership opportunity for us with one of our nonprofit partners. And if not, then James is gonna go find us some slots and figure out where we can put them out there, and we'll manage them ourselves if we had to. But again, this is just to get some units on the ground. I would say this is like kicking the tires. We're just testing it, just to see, is this something that is applicable here? Is it something that we like? Is it something that works? And then we can expand it into what more we can bring about and make happen. Yes,
So this 600K would be from ARP money?
yes,
And just to clarify, the other bits that would be from ARP money would be the grant money for the 2 outreach positions
yes.
and the 250K for the Blue Ridge Area
Yeah.
Coalition? Okay.
Uh,
Or is that just is that
No.
a repeating?
No, that's repeat.
Okay.
You're running my balance for me? To tell me how much I spent?
Just trying to make
I
sure I
don't,
remember
I
this
don't
later.
mind the checking. Check and make sure. I think I got it, but just make sure.
And is the 200K for
The
the
250
5-year?
for the low barrier shelter is also ARP. The 250 towards the conversion of the thrift store to,
Right, but the
Yeah.
200 per year for the store replacement, the
no,
opportunity
that would be,
cost?
that would be budget.
General
That's
budget.
CIP.
Okay.
And I will say that Ms. Hamill has been consulted on all of this, so she's not falling out of her chair right now as she hears me throw all these numbers around, but we have worked through that too.
Wait, I'm sorry. I have my notes that the city would contribute 500K for the low barrier shelter?
That's the commitment, that's the ongoing commitment.
Yearly,
The-
and then
the-
the 250 would be for the initial
Yes,
conversion? Got it,
correct.
okay, thank you.
I'm checking myself, let me make sure.
I think that's different than what you said.
Nope, let's go back. The Salvation Army, $200,000 a year for 5 years, that's budget. 'Cause
And that would be
CIP.
store-
That's
that's
about
the
the
store
store
replacement.
replacement, the offset of income. The one-time facility improvement for the shelter, for the conversion of the store to the low barrier shelter is $250,000 from ARP, and $500,000 a year as an operating commitment for running that facility.
And is that?
That's budget.
And is that, is there a time frame on that, or is it just?
No, I think we would have
baking
to
it in?
determine that based on who we're partnering with and how that works. I don't know that we would be ready to make that commitment just yet.
Okay. Thank you.
This is really, I get what you're thinking. This is framing out what the annual cost is. That's what I wanted to make sure that I had a number for everything so that we could really see what we were talking about. All
So
right.
if we take some of the money as ARP funds, is any of this money that is being reprogrammed from some other activity that we thought we were going to put it toward, but we're not going to be able to spend it in time?
So we've already done that. We allocated ARP funds, allocated most of our ARP funds, and then we pulled some money back because those projects didn't happen or their budgets came in less than, or we changed the scope of the project after we started doing it across the city. We also had in reserves a balance that I think the last time that our prior city manager brought forward an allocation, he indicated that there was an unallocated amount. That money's been sitting, so that is now a part of this. Plus, the funds that we have been able to hold from the federal government for this period of time has generated additional funds. So that interest is also a part of what I'm spending here, because we have to spend all of it.
We have to commit it all by the end of the year?
We have to have it all committed by the end of the year.
That's all of the ARP.
Yes, so we won't, only ARP conversations that you will have with me going forward after December 31st is how we're reporting the shutdown of spending every dollar that we had, and hopefully that we're not sending anything back to the feds. Because I don't like to do that.
Thank you.
All right, so in quality of life, I'm going to talk about the downtown mall, because it's a centerpiece and it is ground zero for a lot of things, good, bad, and otherwise. But ideally, what we need to do is prioritize the implementation of our action plan. We've done a lot of work in getting that done, but we have not yet made the commitment of dollars going to the many things. We have talked about the tree plan. We have initiated that work with Parks and Rec so that they can begin taking trees down and replacing trees. But there are many other things that we still need to do. A couple weeks from now, Friends of Sevierville Downtown will initiate a brand new holiday lighting display. It'll be a very colorful experience. It'll be a nice, attractive thing. I've already seen it. It's pretty. I hope people will just accept it and let it be, because it's nice enough that we should be able to. But I have been able to spin my wheels a little bit and say, maybe we should, once this is done, convert these to all white lights and leave them up, leave them all year round. And that just adds into that whole experience on the mall for lighting it up and making people feel safe. So part of what the future consideration could be is, what does that cost for us to be able to do that? And to me, that's a simple advantage to having a commitment to doing a project like that, but not letting it be just that. What else can you do? So.
That was gonna be my question, is if we could keep, as long as they're not a snowflake, like.
As long as it doesn't hurt the trees from long-term exposure, which I'll ask that, and every tree can recover overnight, and it's okay if we turn it back on at 6 p.m. or something like that. I think, to me, this is about, we have an amenity in our community. It's been here almost 50 years. We're about to celebrate its 50-year anniversary. Let's make sure we're truly taking care of it. And it's been a lightning rod for so many conversations to go north, south, east, and west. I'm not interested in that. So for me, I just want to make sure that we're doing the things that we say we need to do. Adding benches. I know people don't want to add benches because they feel like if we do, then homeless people will take them. And I say we'll learn to live with that, because we're going to put them back out there. And we're going to find additional ways to bring seating that doesn't require you to be in a cafe space, which meant you had to spend money in order to come to Charlottesville's downtown. So that's where I'm going. That's where I am directing staff's attention. And anyone who wants to talk about me can talk to me when they want to. We're going to evaluate cafe spaces. We'll make changes as we need to there. But I point out there's been an absence of an ambassador and a true contact for the downtown mall from day one. That doesn't make a lot of sense. If you were out on the mall today and something happened to you, you trip and fall, who do you call? There's nobody that's coming and run unless somebody saw it and called 911. But if it didn't rise to that occasion, there's no person in an office anywhere that anyone knows that's who I call if something happens out here on city infrastructure this way. And I think we need to do something about that. So part of what I wanted to share with you is, in a recent trip to Pittsburgh, they solve problems in other communities. I want to solve those problems here. This is a Pittsburgh potty. I walked into it and used it. My wife said, "You're really going in there?" And I said, "Yes, I am." I went in there so that I could have an experience with the Pittsburgh potty. And so I could come back and talk to you all about this. We need restrooms on the mall that are available, period, and we know that. And we're spending money right now leasing restroom access that doesn't go deep enough into the night. We have restrooms on lockdown attached to the Downtown Transit Center for obvious reasons of what we've done in the past. It is time for us to move past all of that, and if I have to go, I have to go. And I need a restroom, and everyone knows this, and we shouldn't argue about this anymore. So I am ready to push the envelope, and I'm going to show you what I'm thinking about. This is a green flush bathroom that doesn't require utilities at all. Your porta potty companies can service this facility. They back up to it just like they do to their blue and white and green and white structures that they put all over the place that are made out of plastic. We can dress it up and we can do certain things. Ashley and I had a conversation with them, and they would love to come here and help us figure out where we might be able to put these, how we could put this. This is just one version. I think I saw 25 different versions, so if you hate it because it's ugly, there's something else we can do to it to make it look better. But again, this is about solving problems. I don't want to be here 5 years from now and not know that we haven't solved this bathroom problem. That's how I see it. We should be able to figure this out. And no one wants it next to them, but that's what they say about everything. So we're going to have to learn to live with some of these things. And that's just what I'm offering up as recommendations. This is, I want to go back. This is something that costs money. One, it costs money to acquire them, and I couldn't remember the number, Ashley. Was it $80,000 for a unit?
Believe so.
I think that was right. $80,000 to buy a bathroom that doesn't have to have water because it's already in there, and it works through its internal system. It captures what it captures, and it has water to do what it needs. It does flush.
Is what
Okay,
we're
that
seeing.
I was reading your
Yeah,
mind.
that was gonna be a question, because there are, like composting toilets, like if you go to Walnut Creek Park, and some parks have them, but that's definitely more of a kind of
Yeah.
rural aesthetic.
Yeah. It has a
so-
water component that produces the flush concept, just the same. That's why I went in.
Produces the flush
I didn't
concept.
go in and use it because it was inside an exhibit hall and it wasn't available, but had it been outside, I would have gone in there and used it. Again, just so I could see that this is doable, and I want us to stop getting in our own way, and let's solve some of our problems that have been standing in our face.
And I
for
know
so long.
we've talked about the ones that are like the self-cleaning
Yeah.
spray kind. I'm assuming those are more expensive than this.
Well, the one that we looked at, they didn't have the one that we saw. It was really a metal building. It was metal all over, and it had two colors on it, if I remember correctly. And it had two doors. The door that you go in to access the facility, and the second door was the guts of the unit. It had a huge tank full of water, and it had a huge bay down below that was covered. And the guy described it to us as he said, whoever in your town services porta potties can back up to this and service this unit just the same. And I said, you're joking. And he said, I am not.
So is what we're seeing there one bathroom?
That, I believe, is one bathroom, because I think one side of it is the contraption that I'm describing, and then it's actually only one accessible bathroom on the other side. But this isn't exactly what we saw. It was a little basic. It was metal all over. But this is meant to share with you that I am interested in buying 3 of these and getting them here to put on the ground. And the thing that attracted me the most to the concept of getting this unit is that it can be moved with a forklift. So that means that our team in Public Works are already skilled at moving them where we want them to be.
So were you thinking each end of the mall and in between?
I'm not going to make that commitment because they're going to get mad at me. You're trying to make people mad at me by telling them where it's going to go. I don't know that answer yet.
Right.
I think part of what I'm saying is the demonstration component of it means it may not, all 3 of them may not need to go in the mall. Maybe we put 2 somewhere in the mall vicinity, and maybe one of these can go into one of our parks and we can test using them in other places where we don't have a restroom because we don't want to spend a huge amount of money to bring the infrastructure over to that location. Maybe we have discovered this is how we can mitigate that problem.
And I think that also solves the issue. I know there was a little controversy about cutting the bushes in Market Street Park because that's where people were going to the bathroom. But
Correct.
the solution is to provide a bathroom, and so
Yes.
that area could be a good
Right.
location for it.
So I think that's what I'm getting at, is that it's twofold. Again, it's not just about the mall. I know the mall is the place where we don't have the restrooms, but and that's the reason for picking 3. It's like 2 could be associated with the mall and 1 could be a prototype for solving other problems in other places. And then we come back and maybe we end up buying more.
And I mean, the parking lot that we own.
Yes, that's
would be
right.
a good location.
So
for one.
those would be the scenarios that I would imagine, and
There's,
what I'm suggesting there.
Obviously, there's several bathrooms by the pavilion
Yes.
that I take from the lease agreement we don't have full control over in terms of like the hours they could be open.
Right.
Obviously, for this or anything, the main problem is probably just maintenance and
Yes.
being on top of whatever damage anyone can do to it. Has there been any outreach if the city was able to assume, that maintenance component for those existing bathrooms, if they would be open to operating them,
Yeah.
overnight or extended hours, if we were able to ensure, we're the ones dealing with
Sure.
that issue?
I'll say there hasn't been recent outreach. I've been told that there's been outreach in the past. There was not interest in the past of revisiting the agreement because it would require opening the agreement to make that change. But I have expressed to Mr. Engel that I'm interested in having that conversation again. I think part of what I would like to be able to demonstrate is by figuring out where else we can put them, the stress of that being the only place that people can go might actually kind of go down a bit, and it might be easier to actually close that deal. But I'm open to having that conversation and very much interested in going to the folks with the,
And for these, I guess it would be Parks and Rec staff if someone vandalizes it or there's breakdown in it in terms of covering just ongoing maintenance of them? Or?
to be determined. I got another slide for you.
And-
But that's, yes, we have to be able, I am sure, if I go by what I've been told, in order for us to be able to get the lease agreement open that then restores use of those restrooms, we have to solve the problems that have either happened in the past or the fear of happening again is what it would take. And that would be ongoing maintenance and repairs of things that happen. And moving people if they're in there sleeping and things like that too.
So for the Green Flush restrooms, the portability, the price tag for purchasing the unit at the beginning sounds great, but is this like a printer where it's cheap to buy and then the upkeep is really expensive? Like, what are the operating
yes.
costs for?
Yeah, I think you're pointing out the work that still needs to be done. I was told that Dumfries, Virginia is putting one of these in like as we speak. And I told Ashley we may have to go for a ride so we could take another flush and go see what's going on up there. Because I would like to, again, this is about kicking the tires. Let's dispel all the myths about what can't be done by trying to do something. So
Appreciate that.
that's my concept. Yep. To your point, Councilor Payne, in Pittsburgh, as you see, black and yellow branded colors for the city, and Pittsburgh Steelers fans will know that well. As I walked through the city, this is what I saw. People taking care of it. They're working, they're cleaning, they're doing whatever needs to be done. I assure you, things that they are doing today is exactly what you have heard from your businesses along the mall when they have said, I need help. Before I open my business, I have to do all these other things that have nothing to do with inside my business. If we can then deploy what they call a clean team, would be an opportunity for us to be able to just produce a cleaner city. And I think that's something that we should also be open to. So, again, I am recommending that we use funds to retain the services or integrate it into Parks and Rec with an expansion of team members, a clean team for a 2-year pilot, and that would be with $450,000 from ARP. The goal would be for us to add additional staff and resources that we would need, that they would work a schedule, they'd be branded the same way, and you would see them in key areas. My initial concept is you would see them on the mall all the time, and they would be in and out of the side streets as well, looking at all the approaches too. And they are not here, they would not be there just simply to clean. They're not there to agitate people. They would begin to build a relationship with those same people because they would see them and they become known to them. But also, if someone were coming out of a store with a couple bags and they needed somebody to help them get to their car in the garage, there you go. Somebody could help them do that. That is customer service. That is welcoming. That's the environment that I feel as though in places that I've been around this country, when I go and I remark on like how cool it is that they do that, I'm just saying Charlottesville, it's time. It's time for us to do that too. And this is on our amenity that people love to come and say, oh, how did y'all do that? Because I have heard that. How did y'all do that? Now we need to take care of it. So that's what I'm proposing in this moment here as well.
Yeah, I think that would go a long way, just
I
to
agree.
have the presence there.
Yes. So when I flip back to that slide, you saw me talk about action plan implementation, advancing the tree plan, holiday lighting display, and that was really about converting it to permanent. So $650,000 is maintenance of infrastructure and management of the amenity, $275,000 to acquire the 3 Green Flush items. And still to go back to the notion that there's nobody to call, nobody in charge. There is no governor of the mall or governess of the mall. And I would propose that we identify that as a person so that people will know this is the person who knows everything about the mall. They're ready to jump in and do whatever. If there's a problem, they run and respond.
The 650,000, that was for the clean team?
It's a combination of the 450 and I knew you were checking my math. The mall manager position and the year-round tree lighting, my anticipating what it's gonna cost, because I
Okay,
don't
so
know
it's
that
all
number.
those
Yeah, I'm not giving you mixed numbers, I'm sorry. That 650 is that together for the things that I talked about.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is there any money in any of this for any repairs to the brick surface?
No, that will be separate. We already have that in the CIP as an emergency item, and we would continue to have to look at it that way because we know that that's going to be expensive and ongoing. So we would have to separately prioritize those. This maintenance and infrastructure is really about the day-to-day, the daily cleanup, the daily responsiveness. It might, at times, maybe if a couple of bricks were standing up, kind of tapping them back down if we can get the right people. If we could get a couple of individuals with skill set that might be able to address when one of the power outlets goes out or something like that, we might be able to internally manage some of that. Those are some of the conversations that I've had with Public Works and Parks as to how it would be nice if we could get this a little broader than just simply walking up and down with a broom and trash can and that type of stuff.
The real kind of gregarious type
Sure.
job.
Just be responsive.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, we can deal with it. I just want to be able to say we can do that. So, that was a lot. But before I get your thoughts, what you don't see is a plan at all whatsoever by me suggesting that we are sweeping the mall of homeless individuals. I know people are waiting for me to say that that's what I was going to do. Not doing it. Not saying that because I don't believe that is what you want, and ultimately I do not believe that is what the larger community wants. That is not a solution. I'm not interested in doing things that don't seem to work towards solving the problem. That is what this whole presentation tonight has been about. I asked the chief to come in case you wanted to talk a little bit about what do we have in the way of problems, but I'll share with you that I've been working with the chief now for over a year, and he hasn't been ugly to me yet. He has been cooperative. He has done things that I know he doesn't necessarily want to, that he wishes I would say something different. But I know that he has been responsive, and you all have seen him in action, where he has been careful in how he has handled individuals that they don't have a place to go. And we have continued to have those conversations, and he has continued to add additional personnel into the conversations to be part of the action. For we have moved people. We already have. And we did it quietly, and I did it on purpose, because I wanted to see that we could do this without really spiraling out of control and making everybody mad and calling me heartless and all the things that I know would likely come if people don't like the idea of moving someone. But we have provided bags to individuals and said, can we organize your stuff in this bag with you? You carry it wherever you need to go. But the goal is to give you the ability to carry that around and have it as you need it. But if it's more than what you can handle in this bag, which is more than what one person can carry, we have a pod at the Salvation Army that the major has made available to us. We may need to have another one by the time we finish getting people to take us up on the offer to let us store the bigger things, the many things that you have that you can't move around. One, I'm trying to discourage people from having all of that stuff around them while they're on the mall. I'll be honest and say that. But we've also been managing that well because people have taken him up on this offer almost every time he's asked them if they would let him do that. That has been why we don't see what we saw just 3 months ago. And I measured 3 months because I go out on the mall now on a much more regular basis, and I'm looking to see what it is that's happening today that was happening then. And I don't see the big piles of things in places, and I know it's because of what we've already been doing. We're going to continue to do this work with compassion. I am not interested in telling somebody to get up and go, and I know they don't have a place to go, but I do have to help people get off the sidewalk. No one should be on the sidewalk. You know all the reasons why I feel that way about sidewalks because I can't stop thinking about them. But ideally, we need to make sure that we're helping you by getting you into a place, and we'll work with you to get you the solutions that we need, the wraparound services that we need. But it is about setting a standard, and it is about managing an expectation. And it is important for me just to be able to express that that is where I'm coming from. I've tried to be consistent and say that, and nothing has changed in how we do that work. I know that the chief needs help in the form of the law to do certain things when people refuse to do what it is that we ask them to do. So far, things are working. We're using what is on the books today. Other communities are looking at ordinances about encampments and things like that. I'm not here asking for that tonight, and I'm not going to take away his ability to say that he wants that if he thinks that is what we need. But ultimately, what I'm suggesting to you is today is not the day for us to say that, but we would love to try to deploy all these things because this could make a difference, and it may not even come to that when we're finished. So, now, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, thank you. That was amazing presentation. Thank you so much for you and your staff for just thinking about listening first,
Yes.
from us and staff and mainly from the shop owners and the public about what's happened. We got our letters and things each week, each month. We get together and we get the letters and things from the clerk. I usually get a letter from someone who said that they've come here and they may not come back here again because of, some of the things that they've seen and witnessed. And, I understand this is part of growth of a city, part of a city. This seems like a way that we can do to address it. So, just want to we've been asking questions as we've been going along. Lloyd, do you have anything you want to add? Brian?
Yeah, I just want to say for all of these, the three sections that you've provided here, I think it's a very well-developed list. It's very thoughtful. It reflects a lot of intention, and I want to thank you and your staff for all of that. I appreciate the support from the Salvation Army being a good partner for us. I thought everything, I thought it was, particularly on the homeless piece, and the quality of life, those two components were very well thought out and well integrated. I would say that if I had to, prioritize things, I would probably put buying $600,000 worth of, corrugated metal boxes maybe at the bottom end of my list. All the other things above that are going to really, I think, require a lot of investment and focus, and I think will really be the more impactful pieces. But I can understand wanting to try out the pallet concept. It's just, as I look at the list, I would put that at the bottom, just my view. But everything else I thought was fantastic. I think going to the very first piece about, I don't know if you call it communities, but basically around sidewalks and crosswalks and all of those things. I want to thank you and your staff for responsiveness from the community. There's a lot of pressure that we're under. The community may not always understand all the implications of what they're suggesting, what may seem like a really great idea. Sure. When you go crunch the numbers or you go, look at your engineering books and maybe something else is recommended. I just appreciate the fact, we're to remind ourselves, myself included, that we still need to be, responsive to these requests, even if, our kind of immediate reaction might be why that won't work. Trying to find ways to make it work. Yep. I think the conversation around speed humps or speed tables or whatever, right. I've been wondering about that for years. I'm glad there's going to be actual conversations with the fire department and the police department about what's, I think, lowering the speed limit across the city to 25. If that's something we could do by waving a wand, I would do that tomorrow. Someone pointed out in the last meeting the fact that cars and vehicles are just so much heavier now. There's more momentum. So I walking this line of being responsive and listening to people, and sometimes people will just have a really great idea, or they'll point out something like on Preston or Preston and Cabell Connect. I'm like, yeah, we should do something about that soon. But other things, it may be like, well, that's a good idea, but there's a bigger picture. So just want to encourage you guys to, and I think you are doing that. I just know it's hard. So anyway, thank you.
Sure.
Michael? You?
To the extent that it's possible, just as like a 60-second overview, one of the things that came up is the continuum of care. Just for the community who may not know what that is, could you just explain, either you or Deputy City Marshal, just what that is, why it's important, how it operates in terms of our network of homelessness services?
I've said a lot. I'll let Ashley talk.
Of course, I'd be happy to. So HUD requires localities who are receiving federal dollars for unsheltered individuals, including HAPA, which is for unsheltered individuals with HIV/AIDS, to have a continuum of care. BRAC serves as our continuum of care lead. In communities across the country, you'll see continuum of care leads in various places. For example, in the city of Lynchburg, the lead is a nonprofit called Miriam's House. In the city of Roanoke, it's the Council for Community Service along with the city. So they kind of both work in tandem for that. And what the continuum of care does is it brings together all of our nonprofits who focus in on providing supports for individuals who are experiencing homelessness. So for example, our good friends at the Salvation Army would sit on the continuum of care. Everything from having discussions of who is entering the system, where then we would have conversations about how to help individuals who are entering the system, as well as conversations about prevention. So some of those federal dollars can go towards prevention efforts as well, and rapid rehousing. So we want homelessness to be infrequent and brief. So rapid rehousing dollars can help people who come into being unsheltered move back out as quickly as possible. So our continuum of care lead, again, is BRAC, and they really think of them as a gathering table for all of our nonprofits as well as local government partners, just to make sure that we are moving individuals as best we can from finding themselves unsheltered to moving towards stability and shelter, no matter what those programs look like.
Then I take it critical for figuring out how to allocate those rapid rehousing dollars as well as other vouchers to identify the individuals who can access that and then hopefully move out of homelessness. Could you remind me again the dollar amount to be contributed to the Salvation Army's high barrier shelter, and then what their estimated total overall project cost will be?
So the actual contribution, I guess, for the Salvation Army's existence beyond contributing to the capital campaign and what it would take to get the low barrier shelter would be that $200,000 offset per year over the 5-year period of there not being a thrift store.
And the contribution to the capital campaign again?
And to the capital campaign is 4 total.
And what is their, maybe this is a question for the Salvation Army, what's your total need as part of your capital campaign?
The goal for the,
Come on to the mic.
hi, the goal for the Center of Hope capital campaign is $28 million.
And at this point, are you seeking all of that outside of local city investment philanthropically, or are you going to be looking to state, federal government sources of money, potentially low-income housing tax credits or other sources of money?
All of those options are on the table. At the moment, our primary focus has been seeking philanthropic contributions from individuals, corporations, and foundations. In addition to that, we are making inroads with Senator Kane's office, for instance, and have a meeting on Friday morning with Senator Deed's office.
Okay. And then finally, so just to make sure I understood, so if the city invests in creating separate from that, the permanent year-round low barrier shelter, that would initially be 50 beds, but longer term it could be up to 100 beds for the low barrier shelter?
That's what Major Van Meter said, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And while we have you up here, if anyone does want to contribute, where's the best way for them to find that link or find you all or make sure the money goes to this project?
The easiest way to do that, if they're interested in giving online or learning more about online, I like to search for the Salvation Army, Charlottesville, Virginia. And there is information online that allows a person to learn more and also to contribute online.
And does it give them the opportunity to contribute specifically to the capital campaign, or does it go to the Salvation Army in general?
It gives a donor the opportunity to do both of those items.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, you,
Okay. Few others. So obviously, you know, you need low barrier year-round shelter. People could move into that to a higher barrier shelter, and then permanent supportive housing to permanently move out of any temporary housing is critical. With the Premier Circle project that I know we've already contributed to, is there an estimate of once that's completed, is there a known need for additional permanent supportive housing beds that we know will be a gap?
I think that's part of the work that has to be done. I think that's kind of the point that I'm getting at as to why I'm suggesting making the capacity investments into the continuum. It is why I did not let go of the idea that the concept of a continuum without a shelter, a low barrier shelter at the bottom rung was not really a complete continuum in my mind, because somebody needs a place to start, and outside shouldn't be that start. So that's just me personally speaking in that regard. But I think the reason why you all have not heard from me on the Avon Levy site, and I guess I'm making another announcement, there is no plan for that site, because there's no need for us to have a plan for that site just yet. Once Premier Circle actually comes live, the shelter is in place, the Center of Hope is up and running, we will know a lot more about what's going on, and then we can actually tailor that project to the needs that we may have. It has always been speculated that I was going to do a shelter or the crossings too. We're going to do what's needed. That's the answer. And at this moment, I think the question is a great question, because we have time to figure out what that actually is going to be like, and then make the best decision that we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess just other thoughts. I mean, I agree with what others had said. I think the cost of these will probably have to be triaged and be a multi-year process to figuring out how to fund it all. I think particularly those permanent recurring staff expenses are going to be, or in contractual agency ones on a yearly basis, seem like they'll be the hardest to figure out, and the ones that require us to most figure out how we're going to phase that in over years. I don't know if all of that is affordable in 1 year.
Or we make some different decisions internally. That's an option too. I haven't put that away.
Right, but I'm just thinking that's like over $1 million in just permanent recurring staff expenses, in addition to collective bargaining, other department needs that we just know exist across the city. So maybe it will be possible. I'm just anticipating that seems like it'll be the hardest. So I don't know what the answer is, but you know, in terms of just triaging what is the most critical things to fund first, I don't yet know. And I did wonder, particularly for these investments that are about just the downtown mall specifically, if we would need to move to something like a business improvement district like Old Town Alexandria or other places where the businesses themselves came together to basically tax themselves, but it is all going directly right into that business district. If we're going to make some of those investments sustainable, if it's just for that downtown mall area, is just something, you know, I had wondered about in terms of figuring out how we make this all work.
And Greer is here for the reason that we all can speculate, because we're working together. And the goal is to try to figure out how to do this the best way that we possibly can.
Yeah, and the final thought is just maybe this is already the approach, but just anything around outreach on the downtown mall, I think it may be helpful just to expand it beyond that, because we know there's already people under all our bridges, parks out in forests around, and I think anytime there's a touch for people in one area, there'll be an increased shift to another area, and it'll just kind of move around. So it's obviously that outreach need is, it's always going to shift, you know, where it's most acute.
I think that's why you see me proposing to bring them internal to the staff, so that we have the flexibility to do what we discover we need to do.
And that's it, and we'll just you mentioned it, but just highlight in terms of the management of the low barrier shelter, as well as these other interventions that, you know, it sounds like the city's approach is being open to collaborations with any of our providers. There's not a locked-in idea that, you know, we only want a partnership with one provider or specific ones. And I think, you know, it sounds like there's an openness over time to develop any possible relationships and partnerships that are possible.
I agree.
Natalie?
Thanks. Thank you for all this info. It definitely is comprehensive and like comes from a good place. You know, like you said, we're not out here to punish people. We're out here to try and help in a way where it's actually effective. So I like that very much. I also like how we're spending art money. That makes me happy too.
First, yes.
Well, I mean, you know, I have Chrissy living in the back of my head saying, one-time money, you know, and how to allocate that differently and specifically. So, you know, that this seems like an excellent way to use that money. It's a acute problem. These are real people, and you know, they need to be treated with care and, you know, speed. So that's great. I also am excited to hear about the desire to add those 2 positions and to fill the homeless coordinator services role. I've spoken with people who work in this community, and that's something that they would like to see. So it's good to see that that's part of the plan. There's a security of regularity, you know, when there's someone who has that position and hopefully stays in it for a long time, and then has the support of the funded grant positions. I mean, that gives not just the people on the street someone they know who they can talk to, but it gives people who are operating within the continuum of care someone they know they can talk to. And then, you know, like you said, there are gaps in the continuum. So is that even really a continuum? You know, that helps maintain that, I think, more functionally.
Right.
And then I want to read more about the pallet shelter project, because I agree, it does seem kind of like it is good, and if we didn't have other money we needed to spend elsewhere, great. It's also, part of me is like, we let private money build homes, there's more homes. Again, that's different than free and shelters, but you know, what happens after the shelter is built and then we build these other shelters? What happens to the pallet shelter, and how long is the lifespan of one of those? And, you know, more details, I'm gonna definitely look into that more, but as long as city staff knows that full picture, I
Sure.
think.
That's part of the demonstration.
Before we spend the money, yeah.
You're getting into the little work that still is left to be done, but absolutely. that
Yeah,
makes
so
sense.
just, you know, how have other communities responded, and is it just like one big hot parking lot full of people, and
Yeah.
you know, is that the best
Right.
use of that space or not? And then I was already going to ask about the lighting display in the downtown mall, so I'm glad that's something that you all have already thought of. It just, you know, adds liveliness and warmth, and
Yep.
you know, friendliness, and friendly spaces are good places to be. The bathrooms as well, I know that'll be helpful as a policy. They're not the most glamorous, but that means, you know, mural opportunity or something.
They can be dressed up.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, you know, form sometimes is less important than function.
It's the function I need.
This could be one of those
That's
times. So thank you very much for you and all the staff working so hard on coming up with some great ideas.
Yeah, I had a couple of comments. One is great. I really appreciate this. I know this is something you've been working on for several months, and thank you so much. And also Salvation Army for really stepping up to the plate. And I know this has been something y'all have been thinking about since it's been about a year ago.
been a year.
When
October last year. Yeah.
Yes.
I wasn't feeling like I feel right now standing in front of you,
yeah.
I'll tell you that.
So thank you all so much for stepping up to the plate and saying, you know, we want to be part of the solution. We're very fortunate to have nonprofits in this community. One thing that I, and wasn't presented, but I, and maybe the other councilors as well, is that when they're in other cities, where you have individuals at intersections asking for money, in other cities, they put up signs that go, you know, don't, please don't give money, direct them to this place.
Right.
Can we or have we considered that? I don't need an answer now, but these are some things that I get a lot. And I like the idea of the ambassadors on the mall. I just think we just need more presence, and and I know that they can kind of filter to
Inconsistent.
maybe some other part, right off the mall. And even though the crime may have been going down, it's the perception, and that is one of those things that people see someone, they just feel. And I think this is something we can do. I think we can get a lot more revenue from the mall is if we increase the foot traffic, if you will. And also the idea of the mall manager, that is good to kind of have a point person for it. I know that the other things that you mentioned, that there's still, that it needs some more research. Ashley just sent us something about what it looks like in Greensboro, I think, and
Yeah, there are a number of case studies on pallet. It's growing and
it
growing.
looks good there, and so anyway, lots more investigation to do, but I really like the where we are going in this direction, that we're being caring and compassionate, but also kind of understanding the perspective of all of the users of the mall. So you're right about the articles, because I walk up and down the mall too. I have seen less of their house goods or their articles, so I'm glad that they feel trusted us enough to give them really their life, everything, for most of them what they have, that they trust us with that. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? So what's the next step? Do we have to approve those things?
You'll get, there'll be an ARP item that I'll bring that'll have the list of various things, because that'll allow us to take the action that we need to take.
And will those be public
Yes,
hearings?
there'll be action items on the agenda. So, and I'll probably end up doing it as 2 different items, just because I don't want to make what I just did happen again, where people are trying to understand all of it. I'd rather split it in maybe 2.
And for the question of wraparound services, which is the other really important component, addiction, mental health treatment.
Sure.
Is that something we'll get a presentation on a later date? Because I think just those partners and that side of it is going to be critical and is extremely complex with a lot of barriers in terms of state funding, is the partnerships that exist and whatnot.
I mean, that to me is kind of the work that we'll be looking for, the continuum. That's what we want BRAC to help us with, being able to figure out amongst all of its members what the limitations are, what the opportunities are, so that then we can get that and match that to some of the experiences that our folks are having out on the street, put it together, and maybe we can come up with, let's do this and let's try that. So I'll say that we have already, I think we've now established May is when you get a state of homelessness in the city. We've done that 2 years in a row. We'll do that, and we can continue to stick to that. I think in the mental health space, we're talking about it more and more in different ways. You're going to get that in multiple bites, I would say. But to say a planned update on mental health, not yet. I am going to meet with Region 10 soon. I'm digging into various questions that we may have and looking for opportunities there. So there may be something that comes from that.
Sure.
And I met with the Health District Director McKay 2 weeks ago, and we're talking about getting the Health District better engaged from the COVID years when Dr. Bonds would come here on a regular basis.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other business?
Nope.
We're going to go into closed session now. Brian, can you read the?
Yes, sir. So this is a motion for a city council closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code. I move that the city council close this open meeting and convene in a closed session as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as follows. Number 1, under Virginia Code section 2.2-3711A1 for discussion and consideration of performance of a specific named employee of the public body. And 2, under Virginia Code section 2.2-3711A1 for discussion and consideration of prospective candidates to be appointed to a finance committee.
Second?
Second, can we vote on this? Okay. Thank you. We're now in closed session. We will return at 6:30 for a regular business meeting.